Screen.
I'm going to turn up the volume. Again, I don't have the best of recording stuff, so you may want to try to stay close to the center of your screen if you want to stay in. I apologize for that.
Yeah, no, I'll do what I can. I'll record. I got a camera running, so I'll record it too. So maybe between the two copies, we'll end
Very
up with something
good.
good enough.
Okay, so I don't really know how you'd like to proceed. Do you want to ask questions? Do you want me to ask questions? Do you want to? How should we begin?
Well, I'll go first.
Okay.
For me, the problem between us is basically one where I think you're playing psychologist. Like, let's come up with a philosophy that feels good, that actualizes us, that empowers us as individual humans, makes us feel in control, makes us feel hopeful. And I would argue that I'm strictly philosophy. I want to define the truth. I want to reduce this thing. I want to break it down into its little pieces and know how it works and why it works and can we make something out of it. So that's the biggest distinction I see between us, is that I would accuse you of blending psychology into philosophy for convenient truths, not the truth.
Okay. I think that's a great place to start. I would say a couple of things there. One, I'm not sure the extent to which one could separate, quotes out, truths about the human being and their values and the meaning of life and the experience of being human from psychology. I think one might be able to try to talk about those things which are what they are independent of people and try to get at the truth for those. But as soon as you're trying to get at a truth which includes people and human experiences like love, experiences of that in some way that reveal the differences between us and other animals, despite the fact that it's chemistry all the way down. I mean, I think that I can agree with you that there is a sort of basic level chemistry that's at issue. But as far as the truth stuff, I guess what I feel like you're doing is you're bringing a religious context. I see you as a very deeply religious person who's angry at a God that you claim you don't believe in. And the examples that I would use for that is that when you say life sucks and that there's no real meaningful thing, that none of this has any purpose and it's all irrelevant, I guess I'm not really sure what you mean. Sometimes I feel like you're saying that it's just unintelligent and things are just pointless and nothing really is of significance. But at other points, I'm not sure what you're saying, because it's like you're denying even animal gratifications to us. So other animals seem to enjoy a rest in the shade. They seem to enjoy a simple pleasure like eating. But for you, that's not enough. Somehow there has to be something more, or that sucks. And that to me is like a smuggling in of a religious for you it has to be super fantastical meaning, or the comparative meaning of just animal gratifications are unacceptable. And I think you have, from my perspective, a great Christian empathy, and you care and you suffer for the suffering for others, and that makes it for you in some way. It's like you feel like you're not justified in your animal pleasures, in your animal gratifications, because you know that under the end of the day, and I agree with you on this, that in a lot of ways, every little pleasure that people take, it ends up to be suffering of other people. So, some person's eating meat and it leads to the hard, cruel treatment of animals, and it doesn't seem justified. And some person wants to have children to make themselves happy, and it's this great imposition. Or some person, they want a cheaper product and it leads to slave labor in a third world. And yet, I think part of it is, there's ambiguities there. And when you say that this is you saying, I'm not willing to participate in this stuff because it's crap and the suffering isn't worth my momentary pleasure, you're being so other than animal there. And I see a very religious person angry in a God he doesn't believe in.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of a bogus accusation. Just because there's no dogma, so I just say there's no way to paint it with the religious context.
Okay,
because every religion is based on. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry. Let's go back to your question. Why do you want the truth? What will be the value of the truth? Because the question of why is the truth valued introduces the psychology question. That is, who values the truth?
Well, I know. I mean, it's just a function of intelligence. Logic and intelligence kind of demands the truth
But
because there's no
intelligence is a
functionality.
psychological word.
But there's no functionality to logic or even having the attribute of intelligence and combining our model or running our model if it is not an accurate model. It's by default broken. Your intelligence is of no value if you have the wrong gears. If you put the wrong part on your car, it's not going to run. So it's vital to the function of intelligence.
So how do you know that it's unintelligent?
Huh?
How do you know that it's unintelligent? The world.
Well, that just is another one that you just have to look at it, and you see that there's always intelligence always leaves its fingerprint. Intelligence reveals itself. Well, you know it just because that would be the mechanism. There's no way you could ever do something without leaving the sign of yourself or your intelligence on it. Okay, it's by your order and your construction you reveal your influence. You can't really influence anything without you put a leash on your dog. You wax your car. It always has a logical construct that has nothing to do with the natural order. The natural order is unfair, unjust, chaotic, and everything about intelligence is the opposite of that. Intelligence is the opposite of the chaos, is the opposite of unfair, is the opposite of unjust. So it always reveals itself in terms of its influence is always going to be to apply order, to apply efficiency,
right,
where the friction exists in nature. Nature is all friction. Most of the universe is harsh, brutal friction.
Right, but you're intelligent. Where did that intelligence come from?
Well, we are biological animals that were suited to an environment where it became necessary for us to be able to navigate it in a complex, sophisticated manner to stay alive. Okay,
yeah, I mean,
we weren't tyrannosauruses. We were weak little bugs. That you know what I'm saying. So we had to. Our niche was strategy. Our niche wasn't power.
right.
Okay, so we acquired a brain that could model the world. Okay, so we could interact in different worlds, past worlds, future worlds. We could test worlds. We could test strategies in our mind. And so we became more efficient in how we lived because we had less friction, because we had more order to how we navigated the world.
Yeah, I know. Again, I don't. Oh no, I'm not sure if I'm losing you. I'm not disagreeing with that. I guess I'm still stuck with, aren't you yourself part of nature? Aren't you part of the intelligence which nature evolved? I mean, you
can give nature credit for it, but the point is nature didn't intend it. Nature didn't build it because it said, I will build an intelligence because intelligence is a good thing. All right, it was a natural product. You could call it like entropy. You could call it some kind of law of nature that a complex system will have to acquire a balance.
Why did it need intention? See, for me, I think ambiguity. Like, okay, let's go back to the truth. For me, the truth. I think for you, as the best I understand it, for you, the truth is that a blind luck happenstance was that for some billion years ago, a molecule emerged and it created a capacity to hijack subsequent versions, reiterations of itself in some way, and it's a blind force that's just sort of unfolding. But it seems like there remains these metaphysical, and this is again outside of the psychology, back to the philosophy. I think there are metaphysical ambiguities of how was it metaphysically possible for that to happen. And
do you bother asking that question? When you hiccup, you don't ask the question. When you belch, you don't ask the question. All right, you don't need a metaphysical explanation, and we don't need a metaphysical explanation for why, in a universe with chemistry sloshing all over the place, that there was a combination of chemistry that created a reproducing cell, as far as we know, one time in the universe.
Well, no, I think, again, the we in that statement, I'm not sure that is that universally shared. I think the jury is still out. I mean, the cosmos is so vast, is so big, we don't have a sufficient sample in order to say that intelligence emerged one place. I think that I don't think you're going to find a scientific consensus on that. The part about the ambiguity is that
I'm not making an absolute statement. So wait, let me just, I just don't want to be misquoted. quoted
Okay,
here.
okay,
I don't make the
I'm
absolute
not,
statement
okay.
that it only happened once. I'm just saying every bit of evidence indicates only once. We have no evidence
Right,
of any UFO. We have no evidence
right.
of this extra. So I'm just saying
Fair enough.
other people are making the argument that it's inevitable or it has to be. No, that doesn't have to be. There
Okay.
can be one winner of the lottery.
Can I ask
There are
you-
some lotteries where there's no winner.
Can I ask you, if suddenly you would find evidence of extraterrestrials, would that change your philosophy?
It would only change it to the extent that then the problem's even bigger, okay? Because now we do have a universe to clean, okay? So now we got to go out into the universe and go help all these sentient creatures that are being subjected to this idiotic tic-tac-toe game, this lottery. I mean, I would equate it to a lottery, right? Life is a lottery, okay? You pay in exactly what you get out. And the state might even take a cut.
Well,
Okay,
you didn't have
so
anything to begin with.
I'm just saying there's no free pleasure. Well, I'm just saying it's you're eating your own self. We're eating our own flesh.
That's right.
Okay,
So
peeling
what's
your
wrong
own
with
skin
that?
off,
What's
consuming
wrong with
it.
that? From where comes the context?
Obviously,
by
from
which
my
you're critiquing
sensibilities, you acknowledge that I have these sensibilities where I have this empathy, this capacity.
Right.
Okay,
It's
I know what a
beautiful, Gary.
misery is,
It's beautiful.
and I put value on it. All right,
Well, I think
misery
we
is
all
my
do.
value.
No, I think we all do, and I'm not going to hear that you're the only one who feels in compassion and suffering for others. See, I think you're playing a game. This is where the psychology critique comes in. See, look, you're dismissing it, but there is a sense in which you say about my philosophy in more than one video, Gary, and I'm not sure if you're purposely misrepresenting me or not, but you say that I'm all about happily go lucky and ponies and rainbows and balloons for everyone, and that I'm telling some happily ever after story, and that's just not true. I'm saying there is a capacity of forgiveness, and that this universe is intelligent, and part of the intelligence requires a compassion and a forgiveness for its very injustices as the condition of the game. That is a game. And I want to differentiate.
Let's just say you drew the conclusion that
right.
the lottery was an insidious way for a state to derive tax dollars. Okay, I mean, the highest source of revenue in this state is cigarette taxes and lotteries. So let's just say the lottery, and we equate it to life. And you say, and you've drawn the conclusion that this is insidious. There's more losers than winners. It's completely improportional. It creates more pain than it does pleasure. Okay, it basically steals from the poor to give to one rich person in the end. Okay, it's insidiously stupid. If you have that conclusion, how am I cheating somehow just to point out that yes, if life is a lottery, if that's what it basically is, it's dysfunctional. I don't forgive the lottery. I end the lottery.
Well, again, to me, this is an argument by analogy, and I don't buy the analogy, and it doesn't really work for me. Maybe a different way for me to ask the question would be a couple of different horizons here. One would be, is there any form of meaningful work? Like, is everything work? So some person's a doctor, some person makes sandwiches, some person's a fire person, and no matter what their job is, but some people, they value the work, they try to do a good job, and again, even making sandwiches, the person is a good sandwich maker, and they care that the person who gets their sandwich is a good sandwich. Is that the same as some person digging a 10 by 10 by 10 ditch and throwing a cigarette butt in it, and then digging up that cigarette butt? I mean, is it just the same level of futility all the way through?
No, but obviously the problem is that you're already born into a condition where there's need right in front of you. All right, let's say you were the only thing in the universe. It just poofed one Corey Anton,
okay,
and there wasn't other sentience in need. Obviously, the Hoover Dam has value because it will make lives for sentient beings better. Pyramids are a waste of labor, so we could maybe agree on that, right? It's a preposterous waste of human suffering. There's no end good. Humans aren't benefited. Hoover dams would be great labor, so yes, there would be good joy in building a Hoover Dam. There would be great sorrow in building a pyramid. All right, I concede that point. But the only reason why one is more valuable than the other is because there is a human condition to be satisfied. If that human condition doesn't exist, if there isn't this needful animal in front of you, there's no need to go to the pantry to get a can of food.
Oh, I know, but there's no art and music and love, and there's not this argument. There's not everything. I mean, you're
Well,
talking
that's
about.
all subjective. Those are just entertainments for some organ of your
Okay, see,
body.
that's
So
what I'm saying.
why don't we
I
just
think you
talk
have to
about
forgive
why don't we just
it.
talk about the idea that our sensual pleasures are somehow a higher thing, that they're
You're
somehow
a deeply
better.
religious human being. You're an you're one of the most religious people I've ever met. I mean, that's
Well,
amazing.
like I said,
I mean,
you can make that accusation. I'll
it's
say
not an
first, point out the
accusation. It's
dogma.
not an
Well, it is an
accusation, Gary.
accusation, okay? And I take it a little bit offensively because every religion I've ever heard of has been a sadistic, insane, idiotic excuse for a bunch of people suffering. So I take it a little fucking offensive. You want me to call you a fucking Nazi? You're the most Nazi person I've ever heard. Are you happy now?
No.
I've insulted you.
I'm not
you
trying.
Nazi-esque, motherfucking, solipsistic, selfish motherfucker. Are you satisfied? I have insulted you back, okay?
Gary,
but if you're going to call me religious, I'm going to say, fuck you.
I didn't mean to insult you, Gary. I meant to suggest you have a great amount of care and love for people, and I think... From my perspective,
it's not based on a dogma. I'm not doing it because a God told me to do it. I'm doing it because it's logical. Sensitivity, feelings are the only thing that matter. Not my feelings, your feelings, his feelings, the cat's feelings, the bug's feelings. Okay? Its capacity to suffer is the only value in this stinking universe. And it's a value that everybody seems not capable of understanding. Suffering is the negatives. You want a positive, it is militating against that suffering. It is preventing that suffering. It is aiding that suffering. Right. Okay. That's a guaranteed fucking positive.
Right. Gary, that's why I was saying I would want to begin with the question of, is some work more meaningful than other work? And I think that there are. And I will give a materialist argument for you, that there are some feelings.
You're arguing about the spilt milk. We can agree that if there's spilt milk on the floor, you clean it up. So, of course, it's meritorious work. The question is, should the milk be spilt in the first place?
I don't like the argument by analogy. I don't find those compelling. You keep giving arguments by analogy, and I find it very difficult to follow that. I would rather.
Well, then the default is I have to accept the presumption that it's good because it exists.
What does?
Well, that's the presumption here. If you're saying I can't make an analogy,
Who said life was good?
How can I possibly
Who said
describe?
Life was good?
Huh?
Who said life was good?
You're saying that it is worth perpetuating and is worth continuing. That's the fundamental core of your argument, that it should be forgiven and we should accept it for what it is. I'm saying it's fundamentally broken and we should reject this. This is garbage and we shouldn't be obliged to eat it.
Right, and I guess, Gary, this is a value issue. I think we disagree on the value. I think that there is more intelligence than you're recognizing, and I think the imposition is forgivable, especially given the horizons of meaningful action that are there. What I would want to argue, please give me just 1 second. What I would want to say is that there are some forms of action, forms of interacting with other people, and you begin with no violence, and you differentiate between nature's hardships and the natural disasters and things like this, and the evil that people do through their stupidity, selfishness, greed, all this kind of stuff. You differentiate between that, and you say you try to minimize suffering, hardship through your own will, and you also try to realize with compassion all the hardships that other people have suffered, both from the evils that people have done as well as natural luck and misfortune. It's interesting. Aristotle defined luck as when the arrow hits the guy next to you. See, I think for you that wouldn't be luck. That would just be, you'd have to suffer for that guy, right?
I wouldn't have to suffer. The point would be is that I would acknowledge the fact that it didn't make a difference. If it hits me or it hits him, it's the same negative. All right, it's a guy with an arrow in him. All right, that's all that matters. So there's no victory because I am saved and he is impaled. Okay, theoretically, I'm not saying I need to suffer. I just got to acknowledge that any gain I get by somebody else's misfortune is not a win. That's why I used the lottery analogy. Is that there is no win in that game. Okay, there are millions of losers, so one idiot can squander the money.
I don't think I misunderstand the argument. I mean, I see what, again, I understand your argument. I guess I think that it's interesting that to what extent, maybe I'll raise it as a question, to what extent are humans different than other animals in their ability to suffer for others' suffering? Do you think
Yeah,
other
well, it's just the
animals...
knowledge, right? We have knowledge of it. Look, we know that people held slaves out of ignorance.
So, wait, can I
right?
just ask you?
They didn't
so
have
animals...
slaves. They didn't have slaves for any other reason than people were stupid. Okay, they treated women badly because of ignorance.
Right.
All right, so of course we have acquired knowledge of what other things are capable of, and that we've seen our hypocrisy. We've seen our duplicity. We've seen our cheats and our injustice and the unfairness that was built into our nature.
I agree.
And we've said, no, okay, just because I'm bigger than her does not mean I'm right. Just because, we've done all of that logic. So yes, we're different because we're informed, but it's only because we're informed. Take away our books, take away our culture, and we're just as bad as an ape.
I mean, I think there are senses of that which I agree. I mean, our life is no more significant in some way than a grasshopper and a clam and a whatnot. But there's another sense in which I would want to say, no, it seems like, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, but I feel like you're wanting it both ways. You're wanting to say that we're no different than the rest of the animals, and then you're also saying that we aren't supposed to be able to be satisfied by simple animal gratifications and simple animal satiations. I mean, animals don't seem to suffer for the suffering of others. We seem to have a kind of intelligence for that kind of compassion, and I do think it evolved. It somehow evolved through communication and communication technologies. I mean, the history of the development of love in human society is, I think it's interesting. It now has been bred into dogs. I mean, we breed dogs for those characteristics that we call human. And I think that the kinds of empathies that we can experience with domesticated animals is rising quite rapidly. So, I mean, I think the jury's out on whether or not there's meaningful action. And so I want to go back to this. Are there still resources for meaningful action rather than throwing in the towel? I want to say the problem is that you're never sure, and it's ambiguous, you're never sure if you're overestimating or underestimating your obligations to the world. In some way, you do have an obligation to make sure that your pleasures and your gains are not ridiculous costs to others. But in another sense, you have a right to a meaningful life. You were born, you have right to air, you have right to enjoy the fruits. The question is, like Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa, should she have felt bad sometimes about missing maybe a relative's birthday or something? Didn't she feel like she had some problems at home that needed addressing? Did she really have to live her life completely for others? I feel like people who want to say you have to live completely for others, they're fleeing from the ambiguity in one way, in the exact same way that someone who says it's all about me, I'm going to stab and grab, and I don't care about the suffering from others, that's a person who's fleeing from the ambiguity in the other way.
Well, it depends on what you want to be. I mean, how productive do you want to be? Okay, it's a productivity equation. All right, the little blue stars we're trying to acquire of real value, okay, are the fact that we are going to prevent suffering. So the greatest thing you can do to make your life productive is to prevent something else's suffering. Right? That's just a fact.
How about to create
In my opinion, it's a fact.
How about
not
to create,
to be debated,
create
it's a fact.
friendships and to create... I mean, I think there are some feelings that a person will never feel if they don't engage in the actions that generate those feelings.
Well, I mean, look, I don't agree with your premise that I have ever preached that somebody shave their head and stick needles in their eyes all day to suffer. I've never suggested somebody should not be a heathen and live as a natural human being, okay, and enjoy whatever they can enjoy out of life. I've never suggested anything other than that. Okay. I'm suggesting that philosophically, this is the truth, the context of our existence. And if you are eating more humans, okay, than your own self-value, you know what I'm saying? It's like the slave owner. You're a gigantic fail if you're hurting more people than you're helping.
I agree. Okay, I understand. I guess I'm still confused. I guess I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand, Gary, when you say that life is crap, are you saying that it's inherently crap, or are you saying because it isn't something significant, comparatively it sucks?
Yeah, it craps. Okay, it makes a mess. Okay, the sentient being creates the opportunity for the negative. There's no negative in the universe without the existence of the sentient being.
Oh, right.
It is, in its essence, the garbage. It's the sewage.
Right.
As soon as you open that door, you create the opportunity for loss.
Negativity
okay? You can't
makes
lose.
morality possible.
You can't lose if you don't have a sentient being to harm.
See, I
There's
think
no
what happens,
harm in the universe without us.
I understand you. I mean, I think what happens sometimes is that people are the sort of the same old wretched people they've always been, but people have grown in their awareness of the wretchedness, and now it's not as if people are getting worse. No, we're raising the moral standards on what we think we ought to do. It's, for lack of a better word, it's a backdoor, invisible monkeyed religiosity. And it's not toward you. It's part of the philosophical system that you're espousing.
Well, I don't see it. I mean, George Bush got elected the second time, so I'm sorry, I don't see this elevated human being. I see us now having wars where we're overtly just stealing people's money and calling it, oh, we're freedom fighters. Oh, no, you just bought mercenaries to kill other people. I mean, it's insidiously insane. We've gotten more comfortable with the abuse. We've accepted slavery now because we moved it to China. So now slavery's okay. I mean, so I don't see this elevated human being too much. I see a lot of selfish, more worried about their Gucci this and their iPod that and all of the things you complain about, this commercialism, this obsession with material goods, this whole definition of who I am based on how good the gel in my hair is. I mean, there's incredibly superficial human beings.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think part of I'm trying to think of different ways to come at this issue. I mean, I would like us to find ways to have this meaningful. I mean, again, I think this has been meaningful, but I think for me, some ways it has to do with language and the way that we come at language and the problems of those forms of language which don't well align with scientific forms. I mean, I think this is partly why Fred talks a lot about metaphor, because he wants to remind people in some way there are ways of using language which, even though the way of talking can't be reducible to science, it's not therefore a nonsensical way of talking or a nonsensical question. Like the classic example would be, why did the universe come into existence? Now, scientifically, I don't think we're ever going to have an answer. I just don't. There's never going to be one. But for many people, religious people, the not ever having an answer and feeling the sense that we'll never have an answer, that's an opening to spiritual mystery, and that itself is
exactly, but it shouldn't be.
Why?
My argument is that
question
should be as uninteresting to you as asking the question, why do I fart?
No,
okay,
wait.
It's a mechanical process, period. There's nothing mystical. It's a mechanical process. It had no intention. There's no fairies running the universe. There's no gods. There's no magic toads. It's a mechanical process, and this is what it did this time. It farted a pretty color.
No. Again, see, you're doing this language hoodwinking where you're throwing these things that I'm not saying. So I would ease from that issue into the difference between a what question and a who question. I think science is really good at answering the question, what am I? If I say, what am I, science is so good at telling me in all the gory details. But if I say, who am I, science can't tell me. Because it introduces cultural layers, social-historical layers, linguistic layers, and all the ambiguities of my being. And so who questions lead people into this larger question of, can I identify with the larger conditions that made possible DNA? Can I realize that DNA itself had prerequisite or preconditions for it to be necessary, and that's part of my being. See, because when you say I'm reducible to the DNA, I think that's a disingenuine who there, or that's not a true who.
Well, I know you can say that, but I can sit there and back it up with some science and the rest of it. So I'm just going to argue that I can answer who you are questions, and I can explain to you all the programming that's gone on in the whole history of the human animal first, then the human culture, the culture you've been derived from, okay, the education you've acquired, and I can say these are the programs running inside your head. You have this want, desire, you have an ego, you have these different mechanisms of psychology running around inside of your head, and that's your who, okay? Maybe it'll take me 12 hours to dissect every bit of your psychology, but in a Freudian way, I can dissect you, and I can find out why this is important to you, and why that's important to you, and why you like the color yellow, and why you like your food, the potatoes on the left side of the plate and the meat on the right side of the plate, or whatever your little mannerisms are. Your who can be dissected.
See, but when you talk about when we try to talk about other people, we can get at them as a what and pretend that we're talking about them as a who. But the who question is different than a whom. I mean who. Who do you think you are? Like, I don't mean like you, but I mean when a person says, who am I? They're asking this question of, who am I? If I say, who am I? Some person says, well, I could say, for example, I could say I'm Corey, or I could say I'm an American, or I could say I'm an evolved primate.
Manifestation of a DNA molecule that has gone through competitive evolution and acquired an eccentric psychology that allows it to dilute itself into the idea that it's accomplishing something.
That made possible DNA. I am the ultimate. I am inseparable from that which made DNA possible. You've arbitrarily began with DNA, not realizing that DNA itself had preconditions.
Well, you're saying it had preconditions. I'm saying it doesn't matter. It has one mechanism. The mechanism is reproduction, okay, and mutation. So it's just competing with itself for 4 billion years. We're the product of self-competition over 4 billion years. Winners win, losers lose. And it's a cutthroat, simple, harsh, brutal.
To live?
My argument is, as I've stated it, okay, is sentience is the game. So yeah, you want to live as a non-sentient, then it's a good time to live because nothing's getting hurt. Okay, but as soon as something's going ouch, this game gets really important because now we have a value, okay, and the value can be degraded. We can leave more milk on the floor. So we spill more milk than we clean up. That's dangerous.
So if people would have just been dreamlessly asleep and never woke up, it would have been the best deal. To be a tree.
Well, I'm afraid because that's the nature of the game. I mean, I didn't make it a stupid tic-tac-toe game. I didn't make it a feudal game. It's the way nature is. Nature is a feudal game. As I've stated, you don't like the analogies, but I have to use analogies.
But would you grant that there are certain... Okay, you said that there's a lot in feeling, that there's certain feelings that people have, and there's a feeling of agony over other suffering. I'm not sure what the feeling we're going to call the suffering. I mean, I'm not going to say that you suffer another suffering, but you have some sort of feeling that's unpleasant when you think of how much another suffers.
But
right?
That's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. I'm not talking about my personal discomfort with something else's suffering. I'm talking about the fact that it has value. That the suffering itself, of itself, independent of any observer, independent of anybody crying, is a bad thing. A thing in pain is intrinsically bad. That is the red number in the universe.
Right.
And to make a positive, you have to rub that out. You have to eliminate the pain.
We use words. See, the reality, again, you got to close your mouth and just, it's a much at once. And when we use words, I call pain or pleasure, and it seems like I can separate out these things, but in reality, there's an intermix. There isn't this thing called suffering, which is separable from feeling, which is separable from pleasure, which is separable from love.
Now you're talking Martian, okay? Right there, you're just talking about words. That's Martian to me. You might as well be talking Martian to me. Because I can't even imagine the world where I can't make a huge distinction between pain and pleasure. Well, they're not even on the same sides of the planet.
They're both
They're
feelings.
on different planets.
Both feelings.
Oh, I'm sorry, but they are exactly opposite. You can't get more distance between two things than positive and negative.
The difference between a thought and a feeling is very different than between pleasure and pain. Pleasure and pain
it's
are
the difference between something and nothing. Okay, that's the difference.
Of some sense, with maybe
no. There's no continuum between something and nothing. Okay, those are the two endpoints. Those are the two endpoints. Okay, So suffering is the something, all right, and everything else is the nothing.
Oh yeah, see, no, I would come at that different. I would say nothing is incomparable. You can't compare anything to nothing. It's sort of like that set of all sets thing. I guess that's a different argument. Um, God, I wish I knew how to come at this more.
Well, it's a math equation, right? Let's just say what we're disagreeing on. We have the equation E equals mc squared. What we can't agree on is what E is, what an M is, what a C is. Okay, we're not agreeing on the variables. All right, you're saying love, friendship, feeling like you're accomplishing something are the things that are valuable in life. These are the magical little moments.
Well,
Oh,
including
I
animal
painted a painting.
gratifications, including simple animal
These are the things
gratifications.
that are these are the things of real value to me. And for me, okay, it's exactly the opposite. The things of real value are the deprivations, okay, the sadnesses, the harms, the serious hard pain. That's the real core value. That's the elephant, and the trunk is this little moments of glory where we actually accomplish something of actual
I have
true
to be
beauty.
focused on those other things in order for other people to believe that I recognize them or acknowledge them, or I have to sort of.
You don't have to be focused on them. No. Again, that's a philosophy. I don't want people to focus on feeling them. I want people to focus on recognizing that that's the value that the E equals mc squared is made out of. That this is the variable that is the mechanics of our life. The thing that has value in this universe is feelings. Good feelings, bad feelings. So if we can acknowledge this, the feelings that are the important thing.
And
the food is the important thing, right? The satisfaction of the meal. Whether the meal is made out of maggots or the meal is made out of filet mignon is irrelevant. What matters is how is the consumer feeling. Does it make them feel good or does it make them feel bad? I don't care what they're eating. I care what they're feeling.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, that to me, again, I would say there's a materialist argument to be made that there are many people who will never feel some of life's greatest joys because they haven't figured out a way to turn their suffering into a hymn through giving. I think there are, whether you want to say, and again,
you're against analogies, and you just called suffering a hymn.
No,
it's
it can
not
be
even
made
it's not even
a hymn.
A cogent
it can
analogy.
Be made into a hymn through the way that they have, what do you want to call it? A courage to endure it as gracefully as it can be endured. I think there's that. I think this is tons of people create art out of their suffering. Tons of people, they realize that the price that they have paid to have the paltry little enjoyments that they have, the little joys of a shady day and hanging out with the dog is enough for
and most people enjoy buying lottery tickets. Most people enjoy buying lottery tickets.
And
it's futile, it's stupid, it's irrational behavior, yet they enjoy it. That is a fundamental problem of human psychology.
Okay,
we enjoy and like doing things that are disgustingly stupid. We like to celebrate the World Series champions, right? The World Series champions have been built out of a pyramid of failure, of losers. So you make 1,000 losers for your one glory moment. It's a pyramid of stupidity. Okay, it is not something to celebrate. It is something to mourn. This is moronic. Okay,
right.
There's more blood on the floor than there is birthday cake in the oven.
Right.
Whatever the metaphor is, this cake has cost too much to make.
No, you end up saying the major things are great parenting, creating great workplaces, giving people the ability to have creative, meaningful work. I mean, it has to do...
Curing cancer would be a great thing for a human being to do.
No, it doesn't have to be that grand, Gary.
I'm just saying, it would be a very productive life. If you could write on your gravestone, I cured cancer, it'd be a great thing to write on your gravestone. No. Okay? You kick ass, buddy.
No.
Okay? But the point Well, I don't know. How is that a no? How can you possibly say that's a no?
See, because this is, again, the difficulty that I'm having with your philosophy. I think that you keep saying that everything is crap because you keep having these super overdrawn expectations. For you, a guy who just works at a sandwich shop, who does a good job at the job, somehow it's not sufficient. Somehow that's not worthy of putting on a gravestone. The gravestone isn't like I was a dignified person in the way I interacted with people. It wasn't I gracefully accepted life's injustices and
I gracefully accepted illogic, inefficiency, huge friction, bloody horror.
And so logic
50 million people killed brutally in war. Who the hell cares? It's all okay. I've made this analogy before, but yeah, there is no horror I could project onto the world that would ever put you past the point of saying this is too fucking gross. I could never gross you out. I could kill 100 million, I could kill 100 billion people, and you would just say, fine, bring on the next tidal wave.
You act like each of us are responsible for all of it, Gary.
Well, it doesn't run without us. We're the same DNA molecule that reproduced 4 billion years ago. We're its descendant, okay? It's owned this planet for 4 billion years. We're just the next generation of an insidious infestation.
It's the great differences have been in culture between how people lived and how people have died, and that isn't reducible to the DNA and the chemistry. It's played a major role.
It's reducible to the suffering equation, though. Again, we're just going to keep arguing past each other until there's some acknowledgement that
you know what life was like before
your values
morphine,
are different
Gary?
than mine.
You know what life was like before morphine? Have you ever read about public torture and the spectacle of torture?
Of course. Well, don't you think that that's part of what I'm saying here? That the natural animal is living in hell also. This stupid whole idea of born to die is insane. What intelligence would do that? Yes, I'll make you and then I'll have you degrade, suffer, and die. Well, that doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. So just when you figure out how to live, I'll kill you and force you to start over.
I mean, I understand. People get frustrated with this. I mean, from my perspective, this is why the psychological insights from spiritual and religious texts are so useful, because once you wean them from the dogma, there are great insights about detaching from ego. I mean, I think sometimes when I hear you talk, I hear, it's a kind of ego attachment. There's a unwillingness to accept that that's the deal.
I'm rubber, you're glue.
Hold on one second. Here
I'm rubber, you're glue. I'm rubber, you're glue.
I gotta let little Kiki.
I'm rubber, you're glue.
This is Kiki. I gotta let her outside the door here. Hold on.
Yeah, I saw her in the image.
No, Gary. No, I'm not trying to do name calling. It's not like that.
I know, but I'm not doing it insincerely. I'm just saying, Corey, that yes, I see you exactly the same way. I see you completely ego-obsessed with this human organism like he's some sort of magnificent beastie. And all he is a consuming machine. A lousy, stinking, scheming, selfish, scheming machine.
Ambiguous. I think it's ambiguous.
Oh, I don't. I think it's transparently obvious what we are. We suck.
No, I think
we will enslave each other. We will eat each other's heart.
I mean, I'm not sure who the we is there. I think there
the human race. Obviously, I'm not including me because I kick ass, okay? I'm great because, I've done that get above your ego shit. And I've done it's about the suffering thing. And I've done the justice thing and the fairness thing. So, I kick ass. All these other humans suck balls.
But I mean, do you think maybe other people also feel somewhat similarly to that? Like they think just everyone else is an idiot, and why can't everyone just get in line with the way that they see the world? Of course,
and that's why I argue, and that's why we go through this whole process. What I'm saying to you is that, look, we both don't hate each other, right? Let's admit it, okay? I have respect for
I have no animosity toward you.
I have respect for your capacity to make an argument, your knowledge base, your passion.
Animosity toward you.
Well, I'm just saying all that stuff. But the point is, we have this fundamental tension.
I think we disagree on
that exists
values.
because it is a black and white contrast between us.
I
All
mean,
right? I mean,
I
we
think there's
are
a lot
marching
of
in entirely different parades, going in entirely different directions.
yeah. I mean, do you think though? I mean, I want to have this as a discussion. I don't want to argue. I mean, do you think that our disagreement is one that comes down to fact, or is it psychological? I mean, is it we both have different psychologies? Is it I'm being psychological and you're dealing with the facts, or we have different psychologies? Do we have different values? Are we pointing to different
Yes,
facts?
the values. That's the
I
premise.
think values are a lot of it. I mean, I think a lot of the facts. I mean, we're haggling over more of the details in some of the facts, but I think
But isn't value a fact? And we're just disagreeing over it?
I don't think.
I mean,
I don't think
ultimately,
values are a fact.
there's a truth, isn't there? I mean,
don't
there's a
think-
truth out there about what really meant something.
I don't think.
Like,
Fact
let's
and
say when
value
it's
can
all
be-
over,
I don't think
and you had
fact
the
and
book.
value can be reduced. Like, take for example. Let me give you an example of smoking. Like in a lot of European cultures, they know smoking is bad for them, and they go, you know what? I'd rather die of smoking than quit, and they value smoking. Now we go, oh, that's horrible. They should try to live long, and they should be. This is exactly that problem for me.
Yeah, well, they're taxing them up the bazoo now, too. You can't smoke in Europe anymore either. Okay, so that game's over.
well,
that
you can smoke
those
in
cultures
your
have.
home. People still smoke.
Well,
here.
yeah, if you can afford $10 a pack, so yeah, you have to work an hour a day just to smoke cigarettes.
Well,
I mean,
I think there's
it's
something
ridiculous.
to be said of meaningful work. I think people need meaningful work. They need to work many hours a day. It's something creative. They need to put their hands.
Oh, come on, that works if you got a job that isn't picking up cans full of maggots. I mean, come on.
understand.
I
The
mean,
need-
who wants
the
to do the
need
real
for
hard work?
meaningful
You want
work
to work
is
at a
major.
hospital and mop up vomit all day? I sure as fuck don't.
I think there's a social problem of needing meaningful work. It's not just people need jobs. It's employers and.
Well, I know, but we
it's
know that a lot
multi-level
of work
thing.
that has to get done isn't going to be fun. Ooh, it's a poem. Okay? A lot of the work that needs to be done isn't going to be fun.
Yeah.
So it can't be meaningful in a personal way. It can only be meaningful in a productive way. They're not
Yeah.
going to enjoy the work. Okay? It's going to be a burden.
Yeah, it's okay. It can be uplifting to be able to face one's burdens and know that one did it despite not having to do it. If one relied upon feeling like doing everything that needed to be done, many things wouldn't get done. I mean, sometimes
I know, but we know there's a certain symmetry. You could build a society where, yeah, you could eliminate a lot of that, and our work could be our pleasure. Working could be like watching a movie if we construct our society the right way and we're meticulous about conforming and creating people suited to these things and all that kind of crap.
I mean, we're
so
trying to do
ideally,
it, you know.
the idea. I mean, work is not a good word to me. I love the idea of being productive, but the word work, I'm always going to feel a little bit like, no, I can't say anything good about that. It sucks that we have to work. It just sucks.
I mean, I guess I think of things like the importance of physical exertion and effort, and whether a person wants to just be in a sport or have something, an activity. We're in an obese culture. I think tons of people aren't getting that kind of exercise, and I think, truthfully, I think it has a psychological impact on people. I think.
Well,
I think
of course, I'm all for that.
I mean,
obviously,
obviously,
if you see my videos, I'm into this whole idea of being passionate about life, and I live life kind of passionately. So yeah, I would agree 100%. It's great fun to have a fight with a tree or whatever you're doing. Do your little personal physical life. Be the animal. I mean, look at me. Okay, I mean, I'm the animal, okay? I have no problem doing the Tarzan be the animal thing. My body conforms to nature. I'm just saying my brain doesn't. My understanding doesn't, okay? I'm all about being the physical animal I am. I'm just saying my brain is not a chimpanzee, okay? My brain is informed. I am knowledgeable. You can't fool me anymore. I'm just not going to role play. I will not role play.
Right. I mean, I for my own, I would say that sensibility that you're describing, which I feel as well, I think it's described in religious text. I mean, this is when Adam and Eve bit the apple and they suddenly gained knowledge and they felt a loss of innocence and a kind of fall from living mindlessly just in the world and new pain in certain ways. I mean, that simple allegorical tale, I don't take literally at all. This is a story about the dawning of human psychology and the problem of realizing the hardship and the suffering.
The burden of
Right.
understanding the game you're in, the
Right.
traps you're being subjected to. But look at the Buddhist alternative description of that. The Buddhist alternative description is, life is bear traps, tiger trap, it's snares and crap all over the place. There's not a damn thing you can do about it, so tough crap.
Well, there's no you there to endure it.
Because they're not going to offer you a fake heaven and a fake glory and a fake finish. They're not going to give you the happily ever after. They're just going to say the fable sucks. Too bad, you lose, sucker.
Well, they're going to say that you're not really there. The world that's been cleared is who you are. You're not there in addition to that world. I mean, it's about shedding ego. I mean, I want to go back to this. You asked me, I think, a while back about, how bad would it have to get before I couldn't forgive? And I thought that was an interesting question. I worry about the future of humanity. I don't know what's going to happen. I do feel sometimes, my wife and I, we go roundabout all the time. She says it's getting worse all the time, and I go, look, it's no worse than it's ever been. It's always been a gory, hellish spectacle of all this. There's a fireball in the sky, and there's animals running around eating each other. But I do think there still are, for me, there are horizons of feeling that come from forgiveness, and it is a kind of forgiveness for the unintended. Now, there is a whole level of, can you forgive the injustices that people do? Well, I think we try to do that, and we try to learn to do that. But I think there is a way of psychologically trying to forgive, I don't know, just the fact of being born, whatever that means. But as far as the large social ones, I mean, I don't know if you've ever read it, but there's a wonderful little book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and he was a Holocaust survivor. I mean, he was in Auschwitz, and he tells the story about many people giving up their faith in the camps and what he did to stay sane and how he learned about human meaning and what gives people meaning in that very abysmal condition.
Exactly. Well, we're right back to my initial point. Okay, are you a philosopher or are you a psychologist? All right, that's psychology. Learning to overcome, learning to do the living thing. Doing the living thing is one thing. Okay, defining and describing the life thing is another thing. See, I'm into let's define and describe the life thing. And if I can help you live, fine. But I'm not into your actualization as an individual human.
Yeah.
What I'm doing philosophy. I'm attempting to describe our reality.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the philosophy, I mean, I would just disagree with that. I would say not only can you not separate them, but I would say philosophically, I think the world is ambiguous, and people seek authoritative disambiguations there. I think you have the fact.
Well, you're saying there's no such thing as logic then or something. You're saying that we don't have the tools or we don't have the instrumentation to logically describe the game of chess.
Say you're separating,
yes, we can describe the game of chess. We can describe that.
No, you can't say that you're going to talk about philosophical truth and then have it be about something like suffering and sentience and value and say you're going to exclude psychology. That's meat and potatoes psychological issue, and that is part of the truth.
I fundamentally disagree with that. Of course, we can describe what we are.
Try to come at it from like this way. Like take memory. Like memory, in some sense, is subjective. I say, my memory is in my head. It has to do with my brain. But there's another sense in which nature evolved brains to open certain kinds of past, and I don't mean it with intention. I just mean that brains are a part of nature. And so in that sense, it's not just like memory is psychological. There is a sense in which memory is psychological, but memory is also metaphysical in the sense that nature evolved a certain organism to have this kind of brain which made certain kinds of past possible. And that is a metaphysical truth. It's a philosophical truth. It's not just a psychological issue. I would say the same thing about the origin of sentience and value and these other kinds of psychological aspects.
I just think we have our brain is perfectly capable of doing the Einstein thing and applying the same kind of discipline to what we are, or our description. Certainly our psychology is inevitably going to attempt to get in our way because we have an ego and we have all this other crap. But the point is we can analytically describe what we can look at the maze, all right? We have the intelligence now to climb out of the game, the natural game, get on the wall and look over the maze, see how it functions, see why the rats run, see how many rats run, see what cheese they chase. We can analyze our behavior, we can analyze our psychology, and so to me they are distinctly different mechanisms of function. One part of our brain can model, the other part feels. This is the way it works, okay? And we can separate those two when we need to. When we need to do analytical work, we can do it. We can build something without having to get an orgasm doing it or having to be rewarded doing it. We can just do it because the logic dictates the procedure.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I guess I'm not sure where we're missing there. I guess I would just say the same about time. I mean, I think time is as much psychological as it is metaphysical, and I don't think one could really separate time from feeling. I mean, we can with words, and we can try. See, in general semantics, they sometimes talk about it as atomism or elementalism, where things get treated as if they're separate, but you'd really need hyphens. So even the word like mind or body, they'd really like mind hyphen body hyphen world. I mean, there's a whole unit that's all related there. Now, we can analytically think about them separately, but there's another sense in which we're kind of clouding our thought when we overly stress the boundaries between those.
Well, I'm going to argue that what I see in that kind of conversation is a deliberate effort to fog. Okay, because in the fog, all of a sudden the three pigs can show up. Goldilocks can now re-enter. We can have the happily ever after. We can put a whole bunch of new little ghosty characters in because we have fogged it up. There is an explicit difference between mind and body. It is there. We can recognize it. We can notice it. We can identify the distinction.
Well, yeah, with
there's
the
a
words,
difference between
mind,
me
body.
and you. Well, I'm just saying, there's people who want to say our consciousness is shared. And it isn't in a real practical sense. Okay? And 99.99% of it isn't. I wish it was, but it isn't. Okay? Your wheels are turning, my wheels are turning, and they're doing them quite independently. And the only thing connecting us right at this moment is conversation. And when we're not conversing, then we're really separate. Okay? You're walking your dog, and I'm eating apple, where we have nothing to do with each other. Okay? There is no connection.
Well, again, see, some of that is... It's difficult. I mean, time is funny. You can have a conversation with someone and then continue the conversation well after they left the room. I mean, it does get somewhat tricky. I mean, yeah, I think the problem of sociality is that others are a condition of our being, not an occasional feature of our experience. So there is a sense in which right now, you're over there and I'm over here, but there's tons of unseen others who are right now, kind of each of us are standing atop, and we've become ourselves through ongoing dialogues with other people. So there's
but I sort of would argue that I would model it this way and say that it is like my maze game or a Monopoly board. And we have one inside of our head. We have a model of the world inside of our head. So I have a little piece called Corey in my brain. Okay? You're there now. You're a piece in my model. All right? And yeah, I can run you. Okay, I can roll dice for you. I can say, what would the Corey do? Right. I can see you act. I can hear you talk. I can create. I have a little automaton I have made that is you, that is inside my head. All right, and so this is what I'm saying is we can do this with the world. We can make models, and we can look at them now. We can put them right in front of us and say, what does this thing do? And what I'm saying to you is when I say, what does the human race do? Oh. It makes a mess, and then it cleans up half of it. That is the definition of failure. Okay?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I say, where do you come up with your notion of mess?
Well, mess is the suffering. I've said it before. I don't know how I can be more explicit.
Well,
okay?
I know, but
mess is the suffering.
I see a comparative framework. I mean, my guess is that your viewers, many of your viewers, I mean, we both know this, right? Tons of viewers they're ex-Christians, and they still have a lot of Christian value, and so there's a lot of these Christian, and I think that some of it's very beautiful. The Christian sympathy and compassion and love of a stranger and love of another really came and was ushered in is very different than Judaism. I mean, Judaism and Islam,
I'm not talking any love, okay? So let's not confuse these subjects, all right? You don't need to love somebody to respect their pain. I don't want Adolf Hitler in hell. I don't want to torture Ronald Reagan. I could come up with any figure that I hate and say, no, I still don't want them to suffer because suffering sucks. It's stupid. It's a horrible thing. Suffering is universally bad. I don't care what consciousness is experiencing it. It sucks.
I mean, again, Gary, I mean, we could call it whatever you want. I would call that it's a beautiful love, Gary. And again, don't get angry. I'm not trying to be contentious.
I'm just saying I don't have to emotionally recognize it. All I have to do is intellectually acknowledge its existence.
Yes.
And now I can care for a rat. I can care for anything because I'm not waiting to feel it. Okay? Yeah. I'm knowing it.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I'm not. Some of that, I'm not sure. What I would. I mean, I don't disagree. I think some of that is you want people to internalize it, but I think some of the viewers, I think they hear a kind of, I don't know, I think there's so many people who are really struggling. They're really struggling with overdrawn expectations and the collapse of the Christian meta-narrative of the happily ever after. I think no matter how much they say they don't believe in that anymore, in some way it's like an invisible picture frame that they drop in without realizing it, and everything gets.
But let me make an argument to that. When I was 6 years old, what expectations could I possibly have? Right? It's not like I came into the world and said I have high expectations. No, I came into the world.
I think you
come
in.
I watched people burn caterpillars off of a tree. I saw three-legged dogs. I watched somebody throw a cat against a brick wall, and I said, what kind of hellhole am I in? All right? I had a pet lizard, and our neighbor smashed it on the side of our garage. And how were my expectations overdrawn? My expectation is that this shit shouldn't be happening. This is disgusting.
But Gary, how would you explain, just for argument's sake, how would you explain the transition from the Old Testament gods who were vengeful and wrathful to the New Testament God? Or how would you accommodate, for example, the Indian god, take Shiva. Shiva's both the creator and the destroyer. The god who dances the universe. She's dancing, and while she's dancing,
the religious haven't even read the book. You know that,
no,
all right?
Serious,
you know that most
Shiva.
of the religious people haven't read the book, and in history they didn't read the book.
Look, Gary, man,
okay?
Shiva is dancing, and as she's dancing, her foot is crushing the head of a baby. She's the creator and the destroyer simultaneously. I mean, I'm just saying there have been people in history.
Well, I know, but if you gave me a 9mm and 3 seconds in history, I'd take Sheba out because Sheba's a nutcase. Okay? I mean, screw that stepping on babies crap.
No,
Grow up, bitch.
It's a bunch of religious metaphors.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying that why would you accept this slop? It is not functional enough. There's more friction. More friction than function. More friction than function. Argue with that argument. Life is more friction than function.
I don't know what you mean by function. See, again,
function
by function you mean supernatural or something.
Yeah, well, no. What I mean is there's no belly for the human race to rub. There's no comfort for it to give. It can be consumed by nothing and make that thing satisfied. The universe does not need our existence. There is no need served by our existence.
Right.
And yet we come at this preposterous price. I can't justify one Holocaust victim, let alone 6 million. That I don't know how you justify this horrid, disgusting, conscious experience taking place. How do you justify it?
I think you psychologically say the past is something that you're going to try to understand and forgive, and you begin with what are the possibilities for meaningful action right now. And you begin with nonviolence, you begin with meaningful parenting, and you begin with the possibilities of kinds of social change.
Well, I know, but if you know the fundamental machine is completely geared to this. This isn't an accident, okay, that the living condition has always sucked. It's not an accident that it sucked. It sucks because it's its very nature. We are consumers. Again, I'm going to go back to my nature argument that we are made to make a mess. That's our primary function. Come into the world full of need. satisfy half of it. It's an insane equation. It's tic-tac-toe stupid. Nothing intelligent can play a game this dumb.
Why?
Why? Because of the fact that it's futile. You're going to inevitably leave more negatives on the table. You can't, unless you are here rescuing people from fires, you will inevitably create more mess than you clean up. That's what that's what the human race ends up doing.
That's right.
Okay? It leaves behind more radioactivity than it cleans up. However the metaphor you want to make.
This is why
we make a mess and clean up a small part of it.
I mean, Gary, you saw so many of my early videos where, can people forgive God? And by that I mean forgive the conditions which brought all about this.
It's not a matter of forgiveness. You don't forgive a serial killer that's going to kill tomorrow, right? I mean, if you know it's going to go out and kill tomorrow, you don't sit there, you're forgiven, and then tomorrow, you're forgiven.
Well, I know,
and then
but
tomorrow,
what is
you're forgiven.
Well, I know, but
that would be idiotic.
Well, of course. I mean,
you put the damn thing in a cage.
Well, I think again, I feel like I'm being straw man there. I mean, obviously, Gary, I'm not running around saying let all. It's not all forgiveness. I'm talking about some of these major
we can't fix the past. We can agree on that. We can't fix the past. We can't fix the horror that built us. All right? So let's ignore all the waste of the past. The Black Plague, the Holocaust, all of that stuff. Let's throw it in the garbage and just say, well, pretend all those negatives didn't happen.
That's right.
We're still stuck with a machine, a human device, that is completely run by a selfish psychology that will function incredibly sloppily. We will enslave each other if we give us just a tiny opportunity to do it. Okay, give me 25-cent discount, and yes, I'll put a Chinaman in chains. Okay, yeah. I mean we'll do it. I mean, all right, and we know we'll do it. All right, we'll undercut the other guy because we might get his wife is doable, and she'll go for you know what I mean. We will scheme for ourselves because we are selfish animals.
I understand. I mean, in philosophy, Kierkegaard, I mean, it's sometimes said that the least ethical of all arguments is the argument to inevitability. I mean, I just don't see it as inevitable. I think the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, and by that document, the prognosis looks bad. I agree with you.
Well, I'm just saying it's like with cats, right? You want cats to peacefully live in your house, you cut their nuts off. All right? If you want the human race to be loving and sensitive and all this crap, you're going to have to castrate the bastards. Okay? Because otherwise their ego is going to fuck the game. They're going to rip each other's faces off. They're going to undercut each other all the time.
No.
And there's just going to be blood
there's
and
a
fur
rise of
and flesh
that's happening,
on the
and
floor.
You're not the sole person representing it. I think there's lots of people who feel the suffering that you feel. They feel the anguish. They feel, and they realize and know the hardships, and they have a different strategy about trying to deal with it. I mean,
it's not about dealing with it. It's about acknowledging that the fact that it's not accomplishing anything, and it's at a very high price. It's like a car. It's like a car that burns gasoline but doesn't go anywhere.
Where would going somewhere be?
Why would you own a car
going somewhere
that doesn't
would be
move and it just eats gas?
In that analogy right there, going somewhere would be where? Where would be going somewhere?
Productivity.
Where?
Like I said, we know what's valuable. We know what's valuable. Comforting. Stopping harm. We can't stop harm in the universe.
Okay, so do you
the only way we can stop harm is by creating it first. We have to make the mess, then fix the mess. We have to make the wound, then bandage the wound. We ourselves are not a bandage.
Do you really think that telling people that they cannot have children would not be an imposition of loss, hardship, and a kind of mental anguish and suffering? That some person says...
The fact that it may be to them some psychological discomfort is irrelevant to the fact that you could just say, well, you're going to deny that it's inconvenient that we don't allow the drunk driver to drive drunk? Well, of course, he's now been inconvenienced because he has to take a bus or he has to find a friend somewhere. Okay, but the fact is, yes, the burden is his.
No.
All right?
So you're doing these ridiculous comparisons. Let's take a real case. So there's a woman, there's a couple, suddenly she gets pregnant unexpectedly. Right now, she wants that child. They weren't expecting it, weren't planning it. They're in love. He proposes. But by your argument, no matter what, she should abort. Because it would be...
Well, I'm saying logically, yes, because she's taking a huge risk with somebody else's welfare. Why should you be allowed to roll a set of dice the dice accidentally fell out of my pocket, and however they turn out, you're going to be the victim. So I got dice. How would you like it, Corey? Corey, let's say I have dice in my pocket, all right? And if they fall out of my pocket and they roll boxcars, a piano falls on you. Doesn't kill you, it just falls on you, okay? And if it rolls snake eyes, you find $10 on the sidewalk, all right? You wouldn't care for that, would you? That dice just fall out of my pocket and you get screwed?
Hey, lots of people came into the world that way, and many of them...
Well, I'm just saying, you wouldn't care for it as an adult, mature human who has an individual entity. You would not like to be subjected to that whimsy.
I think if the person were loving and were willing to say to me they were going to do their best given the contingencies, do I have the wherewithal to forgive? That, to me, is the question. Because I think you're saying it's an unforgivable imposition.
I think that's the victim's right first, okay? And so there's lots of people I could put before you who would say, screw that bullshit.
So it wasn't like this person was selfish. They weren't just trying to... Look, the fact is I was given up for adoption, okay? I was adopted. And my mother, she got pregnant when she was a teenager, was up in Madison, and gave me up. She could have aborted. Now, I personally am thankful. Now, if you're going to say that, well, I was just...
I know, but we know you aren't all adoptees and you aren't all babies. We're just saying that the odds are, when you take all the permutations, Corey, there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to have ALS. They're going to die when they're 6 years old. Are they going to be autistic? Are they going to be profoundly retarded?
Right.
All right? Who's going to speak for them? They don't get to fill out a form saying, no, I hate life, and I curse my motherfucking mother's vagina. I mean, they don't get to voice their opinion, okay, and say, don't fuck with me.
I mean, I think this comes down to different values. I mean, my grandfather was severely disabled. He had one arm, he had one leg a little bit below the knee, one above the knee, and he had a very, very hard life. He never took one penny of paid from the government. I'm telling you. I talked with him so many times. He was
10
thankful.
years of chemotherapy. Would you go through 10 years of chemotherapy to save your life?
Okay, I don't. What will you
No. The point is you can always give examples of people who will accept a human condition that you might find abhorrent, where you would say, "Oh my God, they have to be out of their fucking mind. How could they live like that?"
Yeah.
Could you be an 800-pound man that had 10 people taking care of you? Right? You would feel like such an asshole. You would say, this is disgusting. I have other humans serving my disgusting gluttony. You would find it abhorrent. So I'm just saying that the fact that there are people who will endure insane circumstances because they have some dopey psychology that says to them, I'm winning, doesn't mean anything to me.
No, they're not
that is not
winning.
testimony
They're
that
not
I have to
winning.
give any credence to.
They're not winning. They're shedding ego, and they're being gracious, and they're learning
No,
how
they're
to
being
laugh
insane,
at their
in my
body.
opinion. They're being insane, in my opinion.
Do you know anyone who's survived a stroke and is severely disabled?
I survived a stroke, okay, and I was disabled for a year.
Yeah.
But the point is life hardship and overcoming hardship isn't the point. The point is that each individual is going to have a subjective definition of what's worthwhile, a personal definition. And there's no way to give authority to one over another. So in my opinion, the woman who finds the pee under her mattress extremely irritating is just as valid as the guy who says, yeah, go ahead, stick knives in me all day because I don't care because I'm going to live. Okay? I'm going to survive at all costs.
I mean, I guess all said and done, I mean, the more that I hear the argument, I guess I would try to shake it out as, should a person be able to champion the belief that people shouldn't have children? Yeah, go right right ahead. I personally, I don't buy the argument. I don't find it persuasive. I think many people, children are the most valuable thing that they have in their lives. But I would really argue against a social policy. Anyone who would try to implement it as a social policy under the auspice of having the facts, and that people who think otherwise are deluded. See, some of that kind of makes me nervous.
Well, just change the analogy to ending slavery. How far are you allowed to go? All right? I mean, what violence are you allowed to impose in your effort to abolish slavery? Am I allowed to kill a slave owner? Am I allowed to impose on some people and cause some chaos? Well, you say it is. You say it is, Corey.
Slavery
because it doesn't mean anything to you. Just like meat eating or something else. I equate meat eating with concentration camps. They are just as bad, in my opinion. There's no distinction between taking a perfectly sentient pig and locking it in a cage and taking a sentient Jew and locking it in a cage. It doesn't fucking matter. The suffering is dramatic and significant, and it is imposed for no good goddamn reason. So my passion is justified, and just as we went to a war and murdered people, slaughtered people, bombed people, blew the legs off children to stop Nazis, I'm going to argue to you, I'm going to try to impose on you eventually. Yes, that's right, because you are the imposition.
Yes.
You people playing with other people's welfare are the ones committing the goddamn crime, and I will try to stop you.
No, having children is not a crime, Gary.
In my opinion, it is a fucking high crime.
No, that's...
You have no authority, no environmental impact statement,
you have no authority.
I'm sorry. I have the authority to stop somebody who wants to build a nuclear plant in their backyard out of soda bottles. I'm going to stop the stupid lunatic.
These are, from my perspective, these are very false analogies. If you don't want to have children, don't have children. You want to tell people not to have children?
I was born this way, Corey. I didn't come into existence because of my choice. I came into existence because of someone else's choice, Corey. So I am inevitably going to be a victim once again if I do not stop you motherfuckers.
No, each one of us, all of us have answered the question no when we ask, should one kill oneself? And once you've answered no, you're responsible for the life you're in.
I'm sorry, that's irrelevant. I'm not talking about killing yourself. I'm talking about doing Frankenstein experiments with somebody else's welfare. I'm talking about gambling with someone else's money. These are very different things than what you used to do with your own existence. The point is, I will be back. I will be forced to get on this roller coaster that I think is disgusting. Again, I will be tied to the seat, again, by these lunatics who think they can control this experiment. They have no control. They have demonstrated no qualification. We can look at human history and see the slop and the mess. They are totally incompetent. They have no right to have this arrogance to think they can do this God-like behavior. I will create.
No,
fuck you.
Animals procreate. It's not God-like. Again, I don't know.
DNA is not a license. The fact that a DNA molecule reproduced 4 billion years ago is not what I would call qualification.
But qualification comes from a single couple of people thinking about the issue?
Qualification comes from being able to write a simple explanation of why you have the authority to impose on another individual. Explain to me why you have a right to subject somebody else to potential great harm. Why do you have that right?
The imposition. Okay, so let's get to the. And again, I think we're going like well over an hour here. I don't know how many people are going to be watching this at this point. Maybe we should.
They'll be watching. But yeah, I don't want to. It's exhausting.
We could leave it to a second dialogue. But I mean, maybe
exactly.
And maybe, God, I mean, Gary, I don't know what to say about all that. I do think that, to say to a person, here's why you ought to be very cautious of having children, and you have to be really, really into it and love it and do it like this is your
I haven't really argued any further than that, have I? I haven't made videos talking about draconian policy like I'm going to kill all you people or something. I haven't argued that point. I have argued for exactly that. Write a paragraph. Explain to me what you intend to accomplish by reproducing. Okay?
No, but
and
okay,
that
but
at least that satisfies, at least in my opinion, the obligation that you thought about it. Okay?
If a person has rights, the person who exists has rights. People who don't yet exist don't have rights.
They will exist, and that's the point. The future does have a right. That's it. That's almost preposterous. That's like saying we could destroy this environment. We have the right to destroy the Earth's environment. Do you agree that we have that right? I say we don't have a right to destroy the Earth so no humans could live on it tomorrow. Obviously not. The humans don't exist yet, but we don't have the right to take away
why
their
are you
capacity.
trying to secure a world that you don't want?
I'm not. I'm trying to
anyway.
explain to you why your argument is fallacious. Okay.
No, I mean the
fact is the non-existent do have a right because we know they will exist. In all probability, they will exist. And we have an obligation not to enslave them. You don't have a right to sell them into slavery, which we essentially did with our economy. There's a lot of things you don't have a right to do to the future.
My argument
we know the future's going to exist, Corey. Come on. We know that.
Gary, my argument would be that if you're going to include all of the unconceived babies, it's in the trillions, and it doesn't make any sense. You have to at least go with those babies who are not yet born, but are like they're in pregnancy, they're in vitro, whatever. There's something like that. I mean,
I don't have to do any of that.
Arguably, a fetus has rights, but
the future is inevitable as the past is.
You're given an every sperm is sacred argument. You're given an every sperm is sacred argument. There's a crypto religiosity in there. Yes, you are.
I've said exactly the opposite in my videos. I have no concern for sperm. I have no concern for any of that crap. I'm talking about the fact that there's an inevitable welfare equation.
Unconceived babies, Gary.
I'm talking about the fact that we know.
You said to me
that
it's more.
You know when you're pregnant, you're going to have a baby. The fact that the baby, as a human being, doesn't exist yet, it has nothing to do with the fact that you know it's going to be a living thing when it pops out of you, that it's going to acquire a personality, that it's going to have a job, it's going to have a life. You know that's the inevitable consequence. So let's not pretend that one thing is not related to the other because they can't exist with. It's like saying you can have bread without wheat.
Gary, again, I think you're misunderstanding here. I'm not making myself clear. The point is that the baby who's not yet conceived, again, we don't know what that baby is. So a baby is conceived. Now we have the problem is, does this baby have rights? And is it an imposition upon its rights to go through with the pregnancy and bring it in? So it would seem like it's like it would
I'd
seem
rather leave it at conception. Why complicate the issue by creating the life in the first place? Why
you
put it in the
answer
womb?
A question right
Why
now.
put it in the womb?
I want to hear you answer a question right now. Is it more or less of an imposition to abort a fetus or to have used a
I've made this argument. One sentient pig in a slaughterhouse is more of a horror than 5 million abortions.
I don't want to.
You could abort all the fetuses till the end of time. I could abort them right now. I'll just abort fetuses all over the place because it's not in any logical sense any worse than stepping on a worm. You do it every damn day. Okay, fetuses are not complex sentient creatures. They're ill-formed, undermaturated, insentient mush.
Your argument in some way is exactly the point I was trying to raise, which is it would seem then that you're not making an imposition upon that person in the way you
we know what it grows into.
You just keep interrupting me. You're imposing upon a person by telling them they can't have children, and yet you just admitted that there wasn't a person to be imposed upon. That's a logical contradiction.
What do they have, Corey? Do they have a person or do they have a children? I'm saying they have a person. Okay, they don't have a children. They have a human being. They create a human being. So it's not a baby.
There's a person
it's not a Tonka toy.
There's a person who wants to have
a
children.
Fucking human being that they are responsible for initiating into existence.
Yes.
We can't separate it from that fact.
Yes, you got to wear the daddy pants in this world sometimes. You have to be willing to be responsible for your actions. That's right. I think responsibility for one's actions is major there. I guess it would seem like you're denying that to say to a person who wants to have children that she cannot, by policy, is not an imposition, whereas
No, what I'm saying, Corey,
aborting is not an imposition.
The two biggest things you can do in the world, Corey, is to kill somebody or to create somebody. Okay, those are biggies. All right?
Sure.
Now, if I'm going to kill somebody, you're going to have the expectation that I explain why. You're going to say, give me a reason. Who's this guy you're going to kill, and why are you going to kill him, and what are you going to accomplish by killing, and how will the world be affected by his death? All right? I'm just saying to these imposers of life, I want them to answer these questions.
Sure.
Why are you qualified to impose this life? What are you going to accomplish by opposing this life? What's the consequence of this life in the world? What will this life do in the world?
I would say yes. I think that if a person has a loving relationship or is willing and committed and is concerned, yeah, I think should there be a parenting license? Yeah, I think that's an interesting. I think that's a very different than categorically no. And those do seem to.
Well, I'm just saying we can agree on things that are on the same road. Okay, you don't have to go all the way down the road for us to have agreement. So we can agree that this is an act that should be done with heightened responsibility, a heightened sense of care, concern. This is one of the most important things you do in your life. It's not something you just do like drawing crayon on paper.
I agree. I think too many people are way too cavalier about the way they go into child rearing. That you can't want lots of friends and have a career and want all these other things and lots of vacation and also throw some kids in there. No, it doesn't work like that. I mean, it has to be something.
Especially one or two autistic ones, right? Yeah, be ready for every probability and possibility.
I have lots of friends with disabled kids, Gary.
And you've seen what it does to lives, then, right? I've seen what it does to their life. Their kids, painful. Their other kids are ruined. Their marriage is ruined.
Many people, it brings out beautiful, beautiful senses of character. It's struggle. It's painful. It's horrible. They wouldn't have wanted it. They wouldn't choose it again. But many people have found new feelings, new senses of character that they wouldn't have had. It's very complicated.
Yeah,
I think it's ambiguous.
Like I said, I've seen the other side to that coin, which is everybody grows older, quicker, and every bit of life is turned into shit. Okay? Yeah. Absolute shit. Yeah. So, but whatever. We can. I'm not arguing that all is bad. I'm arguing that the bad is bad enough that we can't justify it. That's the argument. The argument isn't that there aren't something good about this life thing. Yeah. I'm saying most of it's synthetic, most of it's Cheetos, but even if I concede that there was a good, I'm just saying the price is too high. Yeah. It's an irrationally high price we're paying.
Yeah. For me, I guess the argument, maybe we'll just try to, I'll say some things and you want to wrap up or whatever. I don't want to take the last word, but I think for me, it's kind of like life is justified. Its horrors and injustices they're part of the complex, ambiguous set of relations that evolved in order to give us this, what we do call intelligence, what we do call life. I think people need more. They need to find the resources for meaningfully engaging the world and for forgiving and for ending their own complicity in forms of violence and of all the justices. But I think, telling people that no more children, to me, is it robs the world of really one of life's great riches. I mean, many people, and maybe it's selfish, but they love babies. They love the thought of the next generation with beginner eyes, grandparents. They love to look at the thought of grandchildren growing, and they realize the horrors at that point. I think most grandparents.
Well, you say they do.
I think many grandparents have, they're past the age. They've seen enough. I think they look at the grandkids, though, and many people are scared about the future of tomorrow. Many remain hopeful that there will be forms of resilience, that there is a dawning awareness. I think the disgust that you feel toward all of the horrors are in fact a kind of raised or elevated moral sensibility, which is its own kind of progress. I believe there is a moral progress that's being registered by the felt disgust over the horror of it all.
Well, we can agree on that. I mean, to me, the logical conclusion is ethically high. So the truth will win in the end, so to speak. If we don't knock ourselves into the Stone Age, the arguments will be made, the truth will be revealed, just like we revealed the truth that slavery is stupid and that women are human beings and all these other truths that we acquired. We will learn this higher ethical mandate that you don't do this recklessly, you do this very well, you do it well or you don't do it at all. Okay? And I would argue that some of this glory talk about your wonderful Rockwell images, to me, is almost Rockwell as the plantation owner. Oh, let's, the spectacular plantation and the beauty and the wonderful white gowns and the beautiful dancing and the beautiful music, all while the humans toil in the field in the futile effort just to get a carrot for dinner. I mean, that to me is there is an ugly, you wash the veneer of the Rockwell off, and there are skeletons and demons and horrors behind it. It's painted in blood.
I mean, it's a bloody spectacle that human history stands upon, but it's, I don't know, I think we need a very large time scale. It's only been about, 10,000 and then only about 2,000. I mean, the sort of revolution of love of the stranger is only a couple of thousand years old. I mean, some of this we'll have to see how it all unfolds. What's that?
200 years, I would argue. Darwin on. Okay? That's the real acceleration of understanding, is Darwin, Einstein are kind of sewed it up for us, and now it's just a matter of us getting used to those ideas.
Oh, see, that would be it. Okay, I think that, let's leave that as the point of maybe pickup for dialogue too, would be to what extent is the scientific revolution the grounding for love, and to what extent did Christianity pave the way for science? I would love to have that discussion.
Okay, we'll try it.
Gary, thank you for making the time. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay,
all right.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Yep.